Okay, guys. First, I'd like to start off by saying thank you all for coming. I appreciate you guys giving your time and coming out and showing support. So this event, we are going to be talking about Israeli militarization and US exchange. So basically, we're going to be talking about the Israeli military, what they do in Palestine, and then compare it to the US. And this event is a collaboration event, meaning that Wayne State University, SJP, MSU SUPR, and Oakland University SJP are all they all came in, and this is a collaboration event. So this is a table of contents. This is basically an overview of the event and what we're going to talk about. So MSU is going to be talking about police as a tool of colonialism, basically what is security. We are then going to move on to the militarization in Gaza, basically how Israel operates an open air prison, and Wayne State University will be discussing this topic. Then we're going to move on to the militarization in the West Bank, basically talking about how Israeli security has grown to control the lives of Palestinians in the West Bank. And Oakland University will be discussing this topic. And then finally, the final topic we're going to be discussing is the deadly exchange, the literal exchange of tactics, weapons, and money between nations. And Michigan State University will be taking over this topic.
Hi guys, thank you all so much for coming out. On behalf of Michigan State University, I just wanted to start off this talk by discussing a thread which will directly link the experiences, our experiences of being policed in America to those of Palestinians in Palestine. So both the United States and Israel share the fact that they are colonial states, which means that inherently they have a native population which they have an interest in suppressing in order to continue, in the idea of a colonial state, in order to continue their existence, it's very important for them to suppress native uprising and land reclamation. And oftentimes the tool for that suppression is in part policing and security in general. And if anybody is interested in learning more about that, we actually had a talk about it 2 weeks ago, and I'll throw a link to the recording in the chat for anybody who wants to watch it. But I just wanted to set the groundwork for what security is in general before we discuss how violent it has become in both states. So here's the link. There you go.
Okay, so the Israeli army has, since 1948, has been taking away basic Palestinian civil rights, living in the West Bank and all around Palestine. And some examples are in August 1967, the Israeli military issued an order that criminalized the gathering of more than 10 people without a permit. In 2010, the Israeli army issued Military Order 1651, which places a 10-year prison sentence on anyone who attempts orally or otherwise to influence public opinion in the area of the West Bank, or if words of praise, sympathy, or support for a hostile organization is published. So basically anything that goes against Israel and its military and what it's doing to Palestinians, speaking out against that is legal and not allowed. And so from 2014 to 2019, over 4,500 Palestinians were prosecuted for entering a closed military zone, which normally is just a spot that protesters would normally gather in. So Palestinians are not allowed to basically live normal lives, do basic things that should be allowed and granted to them.
So we're going to give you guys a brief description of how militarization in Palestine started. All the way back in 1947, when UN decided to create the partition plan, it divided the British Mandate of Palestine into Arab and Jewish states. In 1948, Israel was created, in which it had created the first Arab-Israeli war. The war ended in 1949, when Israel winning and kicking out over 750,000 Palestinians. After the war, the territory that was once known as Palestine was divided into three parts, which was known as the State of Israel, which we Palestinians and Palestinian people call it Land 48, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. Then came 1967, a six-day war. When that was over, majority of Palestinian territory came under Israeli rule.
Oh, hey guys, sorry. So going into the Israeli militarization in Gaza, just to like give you guys just a brief like explanation, Israel is based off of it's a real country based off of religion. So anyone who doesn't have Jewish descent in them, they usually don't want anyone living in within, like if you guys look at this map, this little anything within that yellowish color, they want just for Israelis to be in, no Palestinians. So the militarization in Gaza has, and it continues to be one of the most unnoticed inhumane acts around the world. It goes very unnoticed and not many people talk about it. And although Gaza is claimed under the Palestinian territory, Israeli militarization continues to strategize ways to take over this piece of land. So things that the Israeli military does is all the borders around Gaza are all closed up. So people in Gaza have no access to the West Bank, access to Land 48, which people call Israel, access to Egypt, and access to air and maritime space. So when we talk about air, that means that the Israeli military controls anything that flies over Gaza. And when we talk about maritime space, there's certain amount of miles that a Gaza person, like a Palestinian living in Gaza, is able to take their boat out. And if they get too close to the imaginary like mile length where they're not allowed to pass, the Israeli Navy will like shoot at them, arrest them, and do any inhumane act that they want. So with direct control over Gaza, Israel controls what comes in and out of Gaza. So this includes food, clean water, medical aid, and overall movement of people in Gaza. So that means when someone needs to get some medical attention going, and they need to go to Jerusalem for it, they need to get military approval to go there. And most of the time, they don't get approved. You can go on to the next slide. Okay, so what does the Israeli military do in Gaza? For one, unlawful killings. They kill women, they kill children, they kill the disabled, they kill paramedics, and they kill journalists. All this is actually illegal under international law. So it's not just like illegal within like Palestine, Gaza, Israel, and all that. It's illegal anywhere. Also, there's unlawful arrests. So the military can conduct arrests without warrants, trials, and they're able to do so if they suspect one has committed an offense. And like I said, the majority of the time, there isn't really an offense that was suspected. They just use that as an excuse to make these arrests. And these arrests include children, they include women, they include the disabled, paramedics, and journalists once again. And they also have restriction on movement. So this means if you have a work permit to work in the West Bank, you have to go through the Israeli military. And sometimes they can tear up that work permit, they can throw that out, they can take it away from you, all that. This also includes medical attention, like I mentioned before. Let's say you need to get surgery and you need to go to Jerusalem or you need to go to a city in the West Bank. You need to get military exception to do that. Or they can bring doctors into Gaza who can perform those procedures for you. But if something breaks out in Gaza, you're getting stuck in there. So you can't leave. And then also this includes visiting family or going on vacation as well. So like I said, Gaza is bordered with like Land 48 as well as Egypt. And like I said, most of the time when there's something going down, these borders shut down. So Gaza is known as like an open air prison. There's no coming in and there's no coming out. And we actually want to share you guys a YouTube trailer of a documentary that a girl named Abby Martin she didn't go to Gaza. She actually tried to go to Gaza, but because the Israeli military and government believed that she was an American activist who was performing propagandist views against Israel, she was stuck in the West Bank, and she worked with a lot of Palestinian filmmakers, and they actually filmed this movie for her and sent her the files over email. So this movie actually took a while to make, but it's based off of back in March 2018, the March of Return, and it was a long protest in Gaza, but this is just a little sneak peek of it. We do have thoughts of creating an event of a movie night to watch this movie, so we're gonna present that for you. Rashid, I don't think they can hear it.
They can't hear it?
Yeah, I don't think people can hear it.
I'm not sure.
Share your computer sound. You have to exit screen share and then reshare it, and just click share sound.
Okay. Can you guys hear it now?
Yeah, all good.
نادي بنتنا ورزان بمسابقة بنتي الكبيرة أول فرحتي يعني أول شابة مسعفة ميدانية متطوعة، كانت هي أول شابة كشابة يعني كفتاة تنزل على المخيمات العودة، والكل بادر فيها وشارك فيها. أنا كمان شاركت، كل البيت شارك، زوجي وأولادي وجيراني وإخواني، كل العالم يعني كل الفلسطينيين شاركوا. مش أكتر، هي صح رايحة، وبعدين مسيرتنا مسيرة سلمية، ما إحنا حاملين سلاح ولا إشي، بالعكس إحنا بصدورنا العارية أمام قوة كبيرة من الجيش اللي هي مدرعاتهم وأسلحتهم وغازهم وطائراتهم. إحنا مسيرتنا سلمية، بنطالب بحقنا، من حقي يكون أنا إلي بلد، من حقي يكون لي بيت، من حقي المتشردين في البلاد في كل مكان هذول النازعين يجوا على بيوتهم. آن الأوان ما كلهم قاعدين في العالم كله قاعدين بيتفرجوا علينا، كل واحد مرتاح. إحنا عندنا حصار، لا معابر شغالة ولا دنيا، وين بدهم يروحوا؟
Also, guys, the lady who was speaking was the mother of a paramedic. In this, if you guys look in the slide right there, the one who's holding the key, she was a paramedic in the Gaza March of Return, and she was actually shot and killed. And so Abby Martin had the opportunity to be able to get her mother into the documentary and speak on her point.
Hello. So moving on to the West Bank, I want to focus on some of these smaller injustices that happen in the West Bank, and that those aren't really apparent to most people, but they're still influenced by the IDF militarization and have a huge impact on people's survivability in the West Bank. So the first thing I want to talk about is checkpoints in the West Bank. Now, checkpoints are everywhere in the state. Getting into the country, however, getting into the West Bank is the toughest checkpoint of all. So there was an airport in Kalandia, a city in West Bank, but it was closed in the year 2000. So the only way to get into the West Bank nowadays is to go to a nearby country such as Jordan and then cross the Jisr, as it's called in Arabic, or the Allenby crossing. Now, getting into the West Bank through these checkpoints, it's tough. You have to go through lots of buses, lots of checkpoints, and in some circumstances, like mine and family members, they hold you in interrogation rooms for up to 8 hours for like absolutely no reason, just to deter you from ever coming back there again. Also, more checkpoints is to do with the working life in the West Bank. So because of the occupation there for the past 50 or so years, the unemployment rate there it's sky high. So because even if you do work in the West Bank, you have little to no salary, you're getting bad wages. And so what the Palestinian people have to resort to is working in the Israeli territory through permits. Now, the reason that's tough is because to get to your work on time, you have to go through the checkpoints from the West Bank to the Israeli territories in the middle of the morning when it's still starry outside, when you can still see stars. That's when you have to go to the checkpoints to actually make sure you get to the checkpoint on time and to make sure you get to your work on time, or else you could be fired and then not provide for your family. And so I'm going to show a little video on that happening right now. Yeah, it's quite an ad.
مين بحب يروح يشتغل في اسرائيل؟ واحنا هان في شركه العمال بالذات ما حدا بيلتفت لنا. عملوا عماده الاقتصاد الفلسطيني انعمل في اسرائيل للاسف صار يحوجونا هزيه، ما عندنا اقتصاد وطني. ما عندنا ميه للزراعه. ما عندنا تسويق للزراعه. مين سائل هذا الشعب؟ يعطونا ميه يفتحوا لنا اسواق. ليش كل البضاعه الاسرائيليه معبيه اسواق الضفه؟ مين مفكر فينا في كل سواء اسرائيل او فلسطين؟ وفر لي فرص عمل في داخل الضفه الغربيه بنص القيمه وريح من هذا الارهاق.
زي ما انت شايف بالشابط على المعبر زي الكرون، ولا حدا مسلك ولا حدا مسوي شيء. زي ما انت شايفه اعلنا اضراب امبارح ولا واحد استجاب فيه، لان الشعب ماشي الخرم والشعب ماشي الزفت. يعني بده يعطل عن 300 شيكل لانه بده يعطل، واجينا بدنا نشتري تسريح ب 2500 شيكل مشترم، وانه بده يدفع 2500 شيكل.
يعني من نص ساعة لساعتين حسب كيف الجندي جوا في الغرفة. في ناس سافت في ناس ماتت على المعبر. يعني يوم هذا الحكي مع كل واحد معرض له. شو شايف بعينيك؟ شو شايف بعينيك؟
So as you can see, they're just put in the most inhumane state to get the bare minimum to provide for their families, and that's just absurd in itself. And that's just something that isn't really looked upon when you think about Palestine and the occupation. Most people think about all the fighting and the wars, but there's also so many inhumane little injustices that go on that make the ease of life so much more difficult. So the next injustice I want to talk about is the water control. Now, in November 1967, the Israeli authorities issued a military order number 158, which stated that the Palestinians couldn't really obtain any new permits, or they had to get a permit to build any new water obtaining structures. And this goes to even the extreme of they couldn't even collect their own rainwater in the West Bank. So any harvesting cisterns owned by Palestinians were either taken over by the IDF or actually destroyed because they did not have a so-called permit to collect their own rainwater, which is natural. There's two pictures on the right here. Both are in the West Bank. The difference is one of them is a Palestinian woman in a Palestinian village, and the other one is an Israeli settlement in the West Bank. As you can see, it's night and day, the difference of life. One is collecting from a little type of cave in the village of Qarawa Bani Zaid, and the other one is a resort in Ma'ali Adumim, which has roughly 4 times greater the water than provided to Palestinians. Next, I want to talk about the prices and just the inconsistency of the water there. So the price of water in the West Bank, it ranges from approximately $4 to $10 per cubic meter. Now that is 1,000 liters, or roughly 264 gallons of water. To put that into perspective, in the US on average, you spend around $1.5 or $1.50 for 1,000 gallons of water, compared to the 264 in comparison with the West Bank. Now on the picture on the right, it also shows the access per day. Israelis have 240 to 300. The World Health Organization minimum standard is 100, and the West Bank is below the WHO minimum standard at 73. And although it says 73, if you've been there, like I've had the opportunity to actually live there for a while during the summers, and that is somewhat true but somewhat false, because the water there, as you can see, it's 90% of it is controlled by Israel. So they have the mind to just turn it off whenever they feel like it. So let's just say you're taking a shower here. People who take showers in the US, you hop in the shower, you put on your music, your imaginary concerts in your head, you have all these, good things going on. But there, if you want to take a shower in the West Bank, you have to get in and get out as fast as possible to make sure there's enough water for your entire family. And in some cases, which I've seen, you have to fill up a bucket of water and then shower with that because of the lack of water. And so now I want to show a video on a bunch of IDF soldiers attacking a Palestinian farm due to no permits, and that prevents them from collecting water. And then they also taunt them with the water.
On one of around 30 illegal Israeli settlements in the Jordan Valley, in the occupied West Bank. In 1967, Israel seized control of all water sources in the newly occupied territories. Rights groups say Israel uses water to control Palestinians and force them from their land. This video shows Israeli authorities, guarded by soldiers, destroying a Palestinian farmer's water pipe. They said he didn't have the license for it.
The army came, the pipes were laid from the gate all the way down. There was a new line, the army destroyed it. We were planting watermelons, half of which died.
Under the 1995 Oslo Accords, what was supposed to be a 5-year interim agreement gives Israel 80% of the water from 3 aquifers in the West Bank. Palestinians are supposed to get the remaining 20%, but almost 25 years later, they still don't get that amount. And the Palestinian population of the West Bank has nearly doubled. Around 300 Palestinian families used to farm the land in this area, but in the 1980s, a number of illegal Israeli settlements were built close by. And in order to provide those settlements with water, a number of wells like the one you can see on the hill behind me were also built. And it's because of those wells and the amount of water that they take that the vast majority of Palestinian farmers have been forced to leave. Jasser Daragme says his livelihood has been almost completely destroyed.
If you take our water, then give me an alternative. We're shocked by their politics and racism. It's not normal, it's inhumane.
Israeli military training camps and firing ranges also encroach into Palestinian farmland. A water pipe runs up the mountain to an Israeli army camp close to where Burhan Basharat grazes his sheep. But he can't use that water and instead has to rely on costly deliveries by truck.
Yes.
I feel desperate. Imagine when you see water next to you, but you can't drink it, even when it's coming from our land.
Under the Oslo Agreement, the Palestinian Authority has to buy water from Israel. And all Palestinian water projects in the West Bank require approval from the Israeli-Palestinian Joint Water Committee. Analysts say it's weighted very much in Israel's favor.
The structure itself gives the Israelis veto right. In other words, the Israelis, they distribute the Palestinian application to 16 departments, Israeli departments, and any one of these departments says no, the project will be kept.
What's been described as Israel's water war is killing off Palestinian agriculture at an alarming rate. Charles Stratford, Al Jazeera.
Now, again, that's just an inhumane living situation for anyone who just wants to either farm to provide for their family or just eat in general, or, grow crops. But now the last type of injustice I want to talk about in the West Bank is taxes. So taxes there are a huge issue. On imported goods, which some Palestinians need to survive, there is value-added tax, or VAT rate, which exponentially increases the price of things, even though they barely have any money to provide for the family, and yet all these imported goods, which they sort of survive off of, have absurd taxes. And then also things such as petroleum. So in 2012 of September, there was a firestorm of street protests and strikes in the West Bank, and this ignited the fuel prices to skyrocket. Now, when you want to fill up a gas, your car here in Michigan, if you go to Costco or Shell or any gas station, that roughly costs you around $2 per gallon. But if you want to fill up your car in the West Bank, that $2 becomes $6. That's triple the price, and that is just absurd considering the low wages they already have. Now, another thing I want to talk about is transferring from petroleum or gasoline is the cars there. Now, as you can see in the picture on the bottom left, there's two license plates. There is a yellow license plate and a white license plate. The yellow license plate is for cars under the Israeli government, and the white license plate is for cars under the Palestinian government. If you want to buy a car in the West Bank, you have to put it under the white license plate, or the Israeli government, or the Palestinian government, my bad. And that leads to one thing. That makes the price of your car you want to purchase, sometimes doubles the price of it. And what this does is also, it's a form of labeling. You can compare this to some extreme regimes in history, such as the Nazi regime, in which they labeled their prisoners, tattooed, branded on their skin. You can consider this as a type of labeling, because when you're driving on roads, the Israeli police, the IDF, they will pull you over simply because of one thing. You have a white license plate compared to their own citizens who have a yellow license plate. Now, what I talked before was injustices, but the last thing I want to talk about is simply inhumane. And that is the night raids in the West Bank. As I said, the taxes, the checkpoints in the water, those were injustices. They're also inhumane, but the night raids, what I'm about to talk about, is on a whole different level. So in the West Bank, a form of scare tactic that is predominantly used by the IDF is at night, they will come into a West Bank city, such as the one I'm from, Ramallah. They will come at night. I'm going to say a personal story here. So I was in my room at night one time. It's 2 a.m. I'm on YouTube watching some, videos. All of a sudden, my air conditioning turns off. My lights turn off. My Wi-Fi turns off. I have no signal. I'm just completely in the dark. And then all of a sudden, I hear 20 trucks outside my window. I look outside. There's 20 trucks. A few moments later, I see the trucks go down the street. And a few streets down from me, I see cars on fire. I hear gunshots. I wake up the next morning. It turns out, oh wait, there was a night raid. They came in like a regime army. They abducted young men who were suspected of having Hamas associations and just took them to prison. Just by having a friend by association, they will come to your house at night, abduct you, and that's the last you're going to hear of them, if not for the next couple of years. I listed two names there, Muhammad Abu Latifa and Falah Hamad Abu Maria. Now, sometimes these abductions don't always end in the person being imprisoned without any death. Those two names are just two of countless names, two of countless that were actually killed in these night raids. They weren't imprisoned, they were straight up executed on site in their own homes in the middle of the night. And that's just, it's scary to think about. And people who live there are in constant fear of this happening to them at any given moment. It's even a common thing there for the young men there to not sleep until the morning prayer or Fajr, just in fear that while they're asleep before Fajr or before morning prayer, the IDF will come and abduct them at that given moment and time. Now, as of October 9th, 2020, there are 4,400 Palestinians that are currently in Israeli prisons, 39 of which are women, and 155 which are children. Now, going back to what was previously said, the imprisonment of these children is breaking international law, international human law. These children are put not in juvie detention centers like we have in the United States of America. They are put in adult prisons. Not only that, they're put in adult prisons where they're not given any lawyers or are asked to speak without their parents present. They are straight up talking to IDF soldiers as a minor. And that is just crazy to think about. That is all I have for the West Bank. Thank you.
Yeah, and these night raids, they are pretty similar to tactics that have been used in police in the US as well. For example, there have been house raids on like suspected drug dealers in the US where children have been like injured due to use of things like flashbangs. And these similarities in tactics aren't that surprising once you look at the deadly exchange. And the deadly exchange refers to this exchange of tactics and resources between these two colonial entities that have reached a similar level of like militarization. Both of these colonial powers, both these colonial powers rely on violent suppression in order to exist. But now with globalization, the US and Israel literally exchange tools of colonial oppression under the guise of security tactics. And the United States offers Israel financial aid for their military and provides weapons equaling over $10 million daily each year. And in return, Israel provides its battle-tested security tactics of suppression and brutality to police across the globe, as well as ICE agents and other military forces. So this Israeli expertise, Israel constantly brands itself in the international community as a leading expert in counterterrorism. And this so-called experience comes from over 70 years of work displacing more than 750,000 people and maintaining an illegal occupation in order to support a racist hierarchy in the region. And these policies and this excessive and uneven force that Israel's trying to share with the US have actually been condemned as war crimes by the Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International. And this includes extrajudicial killings of Palestinians and the well-documented shoot-to-kill policy that the IDF has. And other examples are the imprisonment of children, detention without charge, and excessive use of tear gas and rubber-coated bullets. With Israel's status as the largest receiver of US foreign military financing, the request of the president for Israel in 2019 accounts for 61% of total military financing requested each year globally. And just for context, like each year, like Wayne County alone takes over 13 million from taxpayers to fund the occupation and enabling Israel to have the fourth largest military in the world and one of the largest defense industries in the world. And this money could be used for the full-time salary of 162 new teachers, or for providing food assistance for like 8,700 people a year. But instead, this and all the other money given in this like foreign military financing makes up 19% of Israel's overall defense budget. And that's pretty high because Israel's defense expenditures as a percentage of its GDP is like one of the highest in the world. And all this just assists in the suppression and imprisonment of anyone deemed a terror threat without any charges, and that includes over 700 Palestinian children each year. Here are just a few of the sites where this exchange has been important to suppression in the US, but there's nearly 200 different federal, state, and local agencies across the US that have had leaders participate. If you want to see examples of the training itineraries, we have a link here and we can put it in the chat for people. But yeah, these programs target high-ranking police officers and other like law enforcement officials like chiefs, assistant chiefs, ICE agents, and US air marshals, criminal investigators, Homeland Security, Customs and Border Patrol agents, and FBI agents as well. And the high-level training promotes the spread of tactics from the top down and reinforces this message of racial profiling, escalation, and excessive force that's all commonplace within the tactics of the IDF and also police here in the US.
So the organizations which have been funding these exchanges are groups such as the ones listed here. They pay for police chiefs, assistant chiefs, and captains, as well as ICE agents and other military leaders to train in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, due specifically to their interest in, quote unquote, securing Israel's right to exist. For example, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, which is known more commonly as AIPAC, is also a major facilitator, although I didn't list it on the screen. But securitization is extremely central to the stated mission of AIPAC, with its goal to, quote, strengthen, protect, and promote the US-Israeli relationship in ways that enhance the security of the United States and Israel. And that quote was taken from their mission on their website. So in their own words, this can directly indicate to us some of the key information regarding the US-Israel relationship, that unlawful violent policing, invasive surveillance, xenophobic border politics, and colonial expansion are not only enhancing the security of both nations, but integral to the strengthening, protecting, and promoting the relationship between the nations itself, which can be translated to mean that violent policing is integral to the promotion and maintenance of colonial projects. So why is this policing so harmful? I mean, we've seen how mass incarceration affects communities which are disproportionately policed in America. Generations of people end up stuck in a cycle in which they lack access to housing, transportation, jobs, voting, social security, countless other things due to unlawful policing, which targets specific populations and demographics, policies that promote recidivism, intergenerational trauma, etc. And all of this leads to just a small part of the issues of institutionalized racism and poverty in America, specifically in these communities. And as we can see in this little cartoon, the United States does have the highest rate of incarceration in the entire world, and Israel has the 5th. I don't know if you can see it, it's kind of small. However, we have to keep in mind that in both cases, Israel and the United States, the groups targeted are not representative of the national demographics. In America, we know that Black and Brown communities are disproportionately targeted, whereas in Israel, Palestinians and immigrant populations, particularly from Africa, are targeted, such as Ethiopian Jews. And this goes to show that both nations are linked by an interest not only to incarcerate, but also to criminalize people based specifically on their identity and to limit their ability to reintegrate and organize for their own liberation. And I wanted to point to this pretty glaringly obvious example of a little known Israeli military base in the middle of the Negev desert called Se'alim Military Base. And these are pictures of it here, like 2 pictures. And it was carefully designed to mimic Arab cities like Ramallah and Nablus for Israeli military training purposes. So the invasion of Beirut, the first and second Intifada, and the Gaza withdrawal, an attempted assassination of Saddam Hussein, the Battle of Fallujah, almost every one of Israel's major military tactics in the Middle East over the past 3 decades was performed at this military base first. So military tactics like worming, which describes the method of moving through people's houses instead of in the streets by blasting holes between walls. 1 shot, 1 kill, they're all practiced there, which mimics directly American tactics of home invasions, as was discussed earlier, using flash grenades and police shootings, respectively. And this military base is literally known to IDF soldiers as Chicago, based off of the American murder capital of the world. And it's extremely evident how these soldiers are trained to profile and generalize the same way as the Chicago police are. And they literally sometimes are trained directly, Chicago police in Israel. And our current president has even been quoted to say, he said, "You know, in Israel they profile, they've done an unbelievable job, as good as you can do." And Palestinian people hear rumors of this base, but they're not allowed to access it because it's in 48 territories. However, a photography book titled Chicago, Everything That Happened Happened Here First, was an expose from 2 artists of British origin, Adam Broomberg and Oliver Shanaran, who were allowed to access the military base because of their privilege as white Europeans. So with Black Lives Matter at the forefront of a lot of our minds these days, it's really, really quite easy to see the overlap between these tactics and their impact on the communities of Black people in America and Palestinians in the occupied territories. If you want more information, there's kind of been resources scattered throughout this presentation, and we will be uploading this video. But all of this is to say that the exchange of police and brutal tactics and their usage in each respective country together kind of justifies each country's crimes against humanity, because as America locks children in cages, Israel also locks children in cages. So it kind of creates this international blinders when thinking about crimes against populations in colonial states. And I think that's all we have. So if you all have questions, we'd love to hear from you. Does anyone have any questions?
I do. The training of U.S. police and other security forces, what is the dynamic of that now? Is it increasing? Is there opposition to it that's increasing? Where is that going now?
Yeah, there has been a couple of movements in select United States cities to have police sign legislature to say they will not train in Israel because of groups like Students for Justice in Palestine, which have promoted that legislature. So that's been happening. I don't know exactly how many cities it is, but I know it's like more than a dozen. But I'm not 100% sure in terms of police trainings, if it's going up, if it's going down, because it's really difficult to find all that information consolidated in one location. If anybody else knows more about it, you can go ahead and speak on it.
Yeah, I agree with Jamie, exactly what she said. To be real with you, like you can't really like get all that information all in one area. So she pretty much explained it as much as we can possibly do.
And
if anyone else has questions, feel free to hop off mute and just go.
Or you can also throw it in the chat if you're shy.
Okay. Anyone minutes or whoever wants to type something quick if you guys don't want to hop off mute.
well, one follow-up question: if there's a list of cities that have passed resolutions saying that they won't send police to train in Israel, it would be great to have that list.
I'm not sure if there is.
Yeah, I'm not really sure if there is one either, but I can definitely reach out to a few people that I know who might be able to provide that information. And I can reach back
Shireen, you're cutting.
Yeah, you're breaking up, Shireen.
out to you if you want to share your information with me, and I can reach out to you. I'm so sorry.
Jamie knows how to reach me.
Yeah,
I have information. Yeah, I know that like it's been kind of the next step in the
I'll write it in the chat.
Yeah.
Great.
Any other questions that anybody might have?
Well, this is a broad question. We have a new president-elect who has, of course, been very supportive of U.S. policy in Israel for a long, long time. But is there any thought about strategy or tactics in the next 4 years? I know that's a big question.
Not really sure. I don't know if we can tell right now. It's a little early.
Right.
In
It's hard
terms
to
of
know how
tactics, when you speak of tactics for Biden.
Right.
It's hard to know how much he'll be able to be influenced by organizers as well.
In terms of policies, my prediction would be that he would be a bit better than Trump, only because the Biden administration has been working with the Arab community more than the Trump administration has. I know family members who have actually worked with the Biden administration in an attempt to insert some policies that will actually aid the Palestinian people instead of harming them, such as many policies and for Palestinian people and all other immigrants alike through the Trump administration, if that helps with anything.
Thanks.
No problem.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for hopping on. If you guys have any last minute questions, please say them now.
You can also always reach out to us at our social media if you think of questions later.
Yes. But yeah, if that's all the questions, then thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you for giving your time and showing support. Keep an eye out for possibly another collaboration event like we were talking about in the middle of our presentation. Just keep an eye out. We might have a really good event coming in. So other than that, everyone have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you.